Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Path podcast. I am your host, Priscilla Bernstein, the Soul Alignment Specialist. And in this podcast, we will literally be talking about all things of the soul journey. So, whether that be your spiritual path, sacred plant medicines, healing, transformation, sacred sexuality, divine union, soul alignment, manifestations, and so much more. We are literally covering it all, and we are going deep, 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 as well as far and wide. We are really going to be quantum jumping and helping you understand not only what it means to be living in your sovereignty and within your divine self, but what it means to actually live a life on purpose and a life of fulfillment while you are following your soul purpose and soul mission in this life. So get ready, buckle up, enjoy the episode, and we'll see you on the other side. Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Path podcast. I'm your host, Priscilla Bernstein, and we are going to be talking about your intuition today and really what it means to be divinely guided or divinely led and let your intuition, your quote unquote INS, what I like to call your INS, which is your internal navigation system, lead. So, in the grand scheme of things, we all have an intuition, we all have these abilities, and ultimately we have these gifts, right, of extrasensory abilities. We all have this, and it just really takes us honing in and learning and becoming more deciphering of what is ours and what is outside stimulus, right? So, in the grand scheme of things, when we allow ourselves time and spaciousness, we can create a deeper connection, not only with the divine, but with our soul, with our higher self, with our inner child, with our guides and angels and our spirit team, with other ascended masters or entities or spiritual beings that you would like to work with. And so this ultimately takes time and effort on your part, but at the same time, the more that you create spaciousness and the more that you allow yourself quiet downtime, more time alone in nature, this all really leads to you honing in and strengthening these abilities. So our extrasensory abilities are actually like a muscle that we have to work and that we have to strengthen over time. And the first and biggest piece of this, what I kind of tapped on earlier, is the idea of creating spaciousness, giving yourself downtime to receive. When we talk about quote unquote prayer, this is us asking for things. This is us communing with the divine or something outside of ourselves, or even, our guides and angels or our soul and higher self within ourselves that is connected to us. But we are asking for things in prayer. And in meditation, this doesn't actually mean that you need to just like sit still and be quiet, right? Meditation can be just you being uber conscious and hyper aware of what it is that you are doing in that moment. And so when we allow ourselves this time in meditation to become more conscious and more aware to what we're feeling, to what's happening around us, to what's happening within us, as well as what we're receiving. So what's interesting about this is the more that you strengthen these abilities, the more of your abilities come online. So we have a few different clair abilities, and then we also have our intuition, right? And so with this being a divine multi-channel conduit, I am literally channeling 24/7. It does not turn off for me. And I remember in the beginning of my journey when I was doing practices, breathwork practices, and yogic practices, and really had a Kundalini awakening very early on and realized like how blissful and connected I could be without actually using any sort of stimuli. And if you haven't listened to my first episode, the introductory episode, please go listen to that because I talk in depth about that. But ultimately, what I learned on my spiritual path and within my spiritual journey, teaching yoga and doing this practice, being a devotee of yoga and breath work for so long, is that I started to really channel. I started to have my intuition and these abilities really come online. And I remember when I was about 28, starting to go through my Saturn return, which really kicked in at 29, and was a hell of a year. But I really was like having this yearning and desire to connect with my guides and angels, to connect with my spirit team, because I had just for so long had felt like I was trying to figure it out on my own and really not understanding and wanting to be closer to this divine source, right? And just something that maybe you should even know about me is I won't actually use the word God very often because I feel like it personifies something that is so much bigger and more profound than we can even comprehend in our human minds, right? And so I will usually say source. Some people will call it the universe, some people will call it divine guidance, right? So whatever really works for you, but if you are new to my world, you will hear me say source a lot in replacement for the word God. Although I do work with Jesus and Mary Magdalene very closely, as well as the Virgin Mary and other ascended masters, I do not do any sort of praising or giving of my power away to these energies, entities, and beings. And you will never hear me personify source as he or she, because, like I said, there is no gender and it is so far beyond what we can comprehend. Doing as much work as I have done with souls and being very much in tune with what happens when we leave our body and with the Akashic records, there is so much more that is available to us than we are actually aware of or than we have ever really tapped into as a human form. And so if you can visualize it, if you can, create the idea of it in your mind, chances are it does exist, right? If somebody else has created some sort of being out of their imagination, there is probably some realm on some dimension of reality that that being actually does exist. Okay. So, like I said, being a multi channel conduit, I have seen and heard and really experienced quite a bit more than what is seen and understood on this plane of reality and existence. And so, with all that being said, going back to what I was talking about before, the longer that we allow ourselves this time and spaciousness to really be in receiving mode, the more that these abilities will come online for you. And I remember at the age of 30, I literally woke up to what sounded like somebody whispering right in my ear really loudly, and I just like shot open my eyes because I literally thought somebody was standing above me whispering in my ear, and opened my eyes to realize nobody was standing above me. But I literally heard after that, after my eyes shot open, today is the day that you become clairaudient and you will have this ability moving forward. And this was on the day of my 30th birthday, the day I turned 30, and that morning. And I was just like, okay. So after that, I had a clear voice in my head of my guides and angels that were speaking to me. And they ended up bringing me lots of signs and synchronicities. I started working with them very closely, asking for more signs and messages from them on making these big decisions in my life and helping me to understand where I needed to go and how I needed to move and what choices I needed to make moving forward. And they have never let me down, although there have been points in time. And if you've been on this spiritual path for a while and you do work with your guides and angels, you may have experienced this too, where they will kind of test you or lead you in a direction to have you learn a lesson and or a test that is really difficult, right? It's really, to you, it's like, why, afterwards you're like, why did you lead me into that situation? Or why did you say to do this if it wasn't going to work out? And there was always a lesson in it. It was always something for my growth. It was always something for my soul's evolution. So really understand that when you're working with your divine guidance, with your INS and with your spirit team, there is nothing that you can do that is quote unquote the wrong direction or leading you down the wrong path. And so when I talk about your INS, we'll get into this a little bit more, but when I talk about your INS is your internal navigation system. Your body and your heart are two things that you should be using more so than your quote unquote mind, your logical brain, right? And there's a reason for this. So when we say to drop out of your head and drop into your heart, when we're in our heads too much, we tend to disembody from our physical body. And when things get tough or things get stressful, our soul can leave our body and just be like hanging out above us a lot of the time. And so we feel really disconnected. We don't feel grounded. We don't feel rooted in like who we are and our desires and understanding what it is that we want. We're disconnected from that sense of self, and we're disconnected from our soul and the direction that we need to be taking. Our inner compass feels like it's quote unquote off. Okay. And so when we're really working with our INS, our internal navigation system, your body, I like to say your heart is the compass and your body is your barometer. And so when you're working with your INS, you're utilizing your body and your heart continuously, as well as tuning into your guides and angels, your oversoul or higher self, and your inner child. And if you've never done any inner child work, this is pivotal work, and this is stuff that will not only help you heal somatically, but heal on a neural level and within your nervous system, any sort of trauma that you've had in your life, whether it was capital T trauma or lowercase t trauma. And when we talk about trauma in the spiritual sense, and in healing, it's like any strong emotional reaction that you have ever had in your life equals trauma. And so this doesn't mean that you are going into capital T trauma. Some people never experience that in their lifetime, which could be like murder or rape or something very, very intense and extreme, via violence, or um, something like a big car accident where you have, a traumatic brain injury or you break bones, like some people never experience capital T trauma, but they may experience lots of, strong emotional reactions in relationships or within different parts of their lives, which equals a lot of lowercase t trauma, right? And so trauma in the sense that we're talking about is really runs the gamut here. And so when we work with our inner child, so often from the ages of 0 to about 7, and we can even be generous and say to about 14, there's a lot of trauma that happens in that time span where we are ultimately, experiencing a lot of strong emotional reactions. And that not only creates neural pathways in our brain that create these loops that our mind or ego will, anytime we feel any inkling any inkling of an experience that we have felt before that we do not want to experience again, our ego will alarm the brain instantaneously. And this is so happening on an unconscious level, so you're not even aware of it, but it will trigger that neural pathway and that somatic sense and loop within the body and say, hey, we've experienced something similar to this and we don't want to experience that again, so protect yourself. And so you will revert back to that age of when you first experienced that strong emotional reaction to something. So whether it was like asking your parents for something and then telling you that they didn't have money and you threw a huge temper tantrum, and, in your small brain, your whole identity is focused on you, not really anybody else. And so your brain is still developing at this time, but you make it about you, that like your parents don't have money for you, or that they don't love you enough to get you this thing, right? And so it's again happening at an unconscious level. You're not aware of it as, a child. And so you create some loop that anytime you're not given something or somebody says that you can't have something, and maybe you've learned to like override it, but at the same time, if you haven't done that inner child healing or inner child work to reparent yourself and understand where that trauma first started, you will continue to relive in like cycles of that over and over again in your life with people, with certain situations. When you don't get what you want, you relay it back to, and like I said, it's really happening unconsciously, but it's relaying back to ultimately you feeling unloved and like you're not worthy, right? So that can create a whole nother set of problems and ways in which you self-sabotage as you get older, not only in relationships, but in creating money, creating abundance, creating wealth, creating success in your life, right? So that is why inner child work is so deeply important. So, as we go back to where I was before I went on that tangent of inner child work, in the grand scheme of things, when we are utilizing our INS and really working with our heart and our body, we're becoming very in tune with what it is that we're feeling. And so when I say your heart is your compass, your heart is your direct connection to your soul, and your soul will speak through your heart whenever it's wanting something. And your desires start out as whispers. They start out as something that your mind always goes back to. And this is why we use our mind. We never want to turn off our mind. Our mind is a beautiful, intelligent instrument, and so we never want to turn that off, but we have to learn how to quiet the mind and how to learn how to drop into our bodies and our hearts. And so when it comes to making decisions based on your INS, when you tune into your heart and you can feel into whatever this thing is that you're really wanting, this desire, which may start out as a whisper and become louder and louder and eventually feel like a call, a pull forward from the universe, from your soul. And it's like, it just, you'll start to get signs and synchronicities and messages over and over again about this person or this place or this thing, right? And that's everything literally telling you, hey, this is available to you now. Like, if you want it, you can be in alignment with it. You just have to choose it. And so if you're unsure, when we say to get out of your head and drop into your body and become embodied and to feel, when you drop into your body, when you drop out of your head and bring the energy out of your head and down into your body will give you certain indications on whether or not you should be stepping forward and saying yes to this, or moving backwards and saying no to it. So in the body, like, if you know about human design, some of you have like a sacral response where it's like an immediate uh-huh or uh-uh. And if, some of you may have more of a gut reaction that's a little higher, you'll feel it in your stomach. Some of you may feel it in your heart because you have that heart resonance with something, and that your defined heart is your direction, your compass. And then some of you might actually be able to like know instantaneously in your mind, this is for me or this is not. But for those of you that get caught up in the like, oh, I don't know, like, and you start to tend to overthink things and you want to start weighing the pros and cons, when you actually get out of your head and drop into your body, what happens is, when it's right for you, the decision will feel expansive. It will feel, and your body will automatically want to lean forward. You will want to take a step forward. You have this like interest or exploration energy where you're like, well, I don't know, but I like want to lean in more, right? So that's all a yes. And you may ask your guides and angels, your spirit team, to give you a feeling or a sense or a sign in your body as well. This could be like full body chills. This could be an itchy nose. This could be like a finger moving up like the back of your neck, like kind of waking you up, saying like, hey, this is for you. Or it could be like ringing in the ear. You can ask for whatever you want it to be, or you can just say, hey, guides and angels, can you give me a sign of when I'm in alignment with something and it's the right choice, that it's a yes for me, and notice what happens in your body. So if it's a no, automatically your cells know what is right and wrong for you, right? So this can even go down into intuitive eating, into the things, words that you're speaking, into things that you are watching and ingesting on all levels, not just food wise, but like social media, right? Like you can do muscle testing and your body will always respond to you, whether weak or strong, on whether it's good for you or not. So when your body is saying no, part of you will either collapse inward, your shoulders might drop, you might pull back, you might get knots in your throat or in your stomach might turn, you might get like a backache. So if your body is talking to you in some way, shape, or form, the body's always speaking to you 100% of the time, 24/7. So it really is pertinent to begin to work and listen to your body on a day to day, hour to hour level, and doing this, becoming one with your body and really asking your body, well, what are you trying to tell me with these things, right? So a no, if you're making a really big decision, like, should I move across the country, and like leave my job that I love to go move in with my boyfriend, like this is a total hypothetical, right? But if like you get a stomach ache thinking about that and your mind is overriding that, your body is literally trying to tell you, hey, this is not a good idea. Don't do this. It doesn't matter how much you love that person. There's maybe something that's going to happen or an opportunity that's coming later for you guys to move in together at a later date, but for whatever reason, if you're listening to your body and your guides and angels, your quote unquote INS, and this, unit of working in tandem with your spirit team, this will help you make these decisions in a way to always keep you on the sacred path, the sovereign path for you. And your sovereign path, your truth may be different than other people's truth, even if you are in very close proximity with them, even if you have had the same upbringing, even if you are almost the exact same person, like let's say you have an identical twin and you guys have done everything together, your past lives and the evolution of your soul and what you've been through in this lifetime will dictate what it is that is your truth and is an alignment for you in this lifetime, right? And so we really have to stop looking outwardly for the the answers, because when we tell you you have all the answers within, you literally have all the answers within. And so it is up to you to begin to listen within, not only to your body and your heart and soul, but to working and tuning into your guides and angels and your spirit team and anyone else that you decide to work with. Like you can call upon, if your aunt raised you or your grandmother raised you and you were really close with them and you want them around and you want them to help you navigate in this life, you can call upon them to help you, to be a guide for you. Granted, they may have a lot of other work that they're doing, and so they'll come when you call upon them, but they may not come exactly when you want them every single time. So be patient with them, okay? But if it's something that, like an ascended master or someone, you can call upon them. Let's say you really are in tune with like Ganesha, the remover of obstacles, right? And you don't even have to be Hindu, but you can call upon him and say, hey, Ganesha, I want to work with you and I want you to remove the obstacles out of my path that are hindering me from getting from where I am now to what I want. Show me anything that I need to remove myself, but anything else that you can remove, please do so. And you may be called to like listen to a chant with Ganesha, remover of obstacles, energy in it. These things may start popping up in your reality as like indications or signs or messages. And signs and messages and synchronicities can literally come in any form. It can come when you're walking down the street and you're passing somebody and you pick up on their conversation and you just hear one little part of it. It just like somehow gets louder and a decibel level to where you hear exactly what they're saying at that exact moment. And it's like, oh, I actually needed to hear that. Like right then, like that was a sign. Thank you. Thank you, Spirit, right? And so they can come through when you're going in the doctor's office and you sit down, you pick up a magazine, you start reading an article, and there's something in there that it's like, oh, I was looking for that answer. And like there it was, right? Signs, synchronicities, and messages can come in any form. It can come through music, it can come through angel numbers, it can come through um, plants and animals, animal spirits. It can come through a friend, through a book or a novel that you pick up, through a podcast that you're listening to, right? Like there are so many ways that signs and synchronicities can come in. And so when you're working with your INS and you are actively asking your guides and angels to support you on your journey, one thing you have to remember is that your guides and angels cannot step in on your behalf unless you invite them to do so. So, unless it is not your time and they have to save you from dying before you're meant to go, that is the only time they are allowed to interact or to interfere with your decision making and your movements, right? But in the grand scheme of things, if you are not in imminent danger, they are not going to step in unless you are literally inviting them, giving them permission, and asking them to do so on a daily basis. And so I like to, and I teach all my clients this, I like to call upon my guides and angels first thing in the morning, and I like to allow them to use me as a vessel. And I will say, please use my eyes as your eyes so that I may see what it is I need to see. Please utilize my ears as your ears so that I may hear what it is I need to hear. Please utilize my voice and my throat so that I may speak what it is I need to speak and share what it is I need to share today, as well as utilize my body as a vessel to get me from point A to point B and to keep me on the path of alignment, right? And so each day, as you're doing this, as you're asking for them to step in and be a part of your everyday reality and to help you, to help guide you on this path, you are literally stepping in and saying yes to the sacred path. You are saying yes to your divine sovereign path that is for you and in alignment with your truth. And so when you're asking them as well to help give you signs, synchronicities, and messages to keep you on your true north, to keep you in tune with your true north, they will continue to keep giving you those things. So, like I said, you have to welcome them in. You have to create a relationship with them. And the more that you are talking with them, the more that you're communing with them, the more they're going to bring you. And so, the further you get into this journey, and the more in tune you get with your guides and angels, with your higher self, with your inner child, the more you will receive from them. And don't be surprised, and like, don't let this deter you either, but don't be surprised if you start waking up between the hours of 3 and 5 in the morning, usually around between 3 and 4. But this is when they are usually most active because you are most receptive at that time, because everything around you is asleep. You have gotten enough sleep usually, and they'll wake you up around that time to bring you more information, to bring you more messages. When I was doing Kundalini all the time, every morning, I was being woken up at like 3 and 4 in the morning all the time. I still get that, but if it's only if I need a message that they're bringing me at that time. And usually I would just wake up and say, okay, what do you need to tell me? And they would give me whatever message I needed. And then it was back to sleep for me. So, in the grand scheme of things, there's so much that you can do to allow yourself the time and spaciousness. First and foremost, spend more time alone. Get out in nature because nature is the number one fastest way that you can actually be in alignment and in tune and in communion with your with source, with your guides and angels the fastest, okay? So being in nature will connect you faster than anything else. And it's about becoming one with the natural elements, with the what do you call it? The cycles of life, right? And when you're in tune with nature and you're in nature and steeped in nature, you connect very quickly not only with the natural world, but with the insects, the trees, the flora and the fauna, you can start to feel the breeze on your skin. You become more embodied almost instantaneously. And it's the fastest way to get grounded. It's the fastest way to de-ionize your field and get away from quote unquote electronics or any sort of EMFs, right? So being in the natural world or in nature is going to be the easiest way that you can connect. If you live in the middle of the city and that's difficult for you, that's okay. Allow yourself the time and spaciousness if you can first thing in the morning, because that is when you're first coming out of your sleepiness, you're still in kind of theta state. This is a great time to drop into meditation or to allow yourself a quiet morning. Like, don't just throw on the music the second you wake up, but allow yourself that time and spaciousness to be quiet, to do some body movement, to do some breath work, to get in tune with your body, and then commune with your guides and angels and allow them to work through you to allow yourself, your body, to be a conduit and a channel for what it is that you are needing to do, and how it is you're needing to move in your day. And so then it's up to you to listen to the pings, to notice the signs and synchronicities, to ask questions if you're unsure about something. If you keep seeing, a certain number, you keep seeing a certain sign, you can say, like, what are you trying to tell me about this? Like, why do you keep showing me this? And then you'll get the message. It may not happen right then, but give it time and some space, and within the next like 48 hours, 72 hours, or maybe it'll happen a week later. You can't force these things, but a lot of times we receive our messages when we are somewhat happy and disconnected. So a lot of times people receive their messages when they're in the shower, or they receive their messages when they're asleep and in a dream, or they receive their messages when they're on a road trip and driving. And so it really does come down to allowing yourself the time and spaciousness to disconnect from the stimuli of the overstimulation that we get from being on social media, from having everything pretty much at our fingertips and being super engaging with people around us. And so sometimes it really takes you omitting yourself and getting out of the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and like getting in the car and just going on a road trip and not listening to a podcast or listening to music, and just allowing yourself and your mind to be steady, to be still, to just receive. I cannot tell you, in the beginning, I got so many massive downloads, and that was when my guides and angels would speak to me the most, is when I was in the car. They would say, turn off the music. I would get that clear direction and I would turn off the music, and then all of a sudden I would start to hear their messages. Now I can get messages when I'm in a very loud concert, at a festival. I mean, it's literally 24/7 that it's happening, but at the same time, in the beginning, I needed that to turn off the music. I needed to, be on a long drive and disconnected from all the other stimuli and just focused on one thing, which allowed me to just open my mind and receive what it was that my guides and angels are trying to share with me. So, with all this being said, I know I have just given you guys a ton of information, but I hope this was really helpful. And if you would like to learn more from me, I will be offering my divination course again this fall. Next month, I will probably start advertising it, but I will have it up for pre-sale on my website. So you can go and look at that. Pre-sale is the cheapest you will get it, but this is such a fun course. And this divination course is really not only helping you understand like how to connect with your guides and angels at a deeper level, but it's through the utilization of divination tools. And this winter, I will run my multidimensional being course again. And this course is really great because that course is all about how to really strengthen and tap into your five clear abilities and telepathy and really building up your intuition. So if you're interested in either of those, please check out my website. Those will be um, going up for pre-sale soon. And if you like this podcast, if you wouldn't mind rating and leaving a review on it and then sending me a screenshot of that before you hit submit, I will give you $222 off of either of those, any of the sacred offerings in my site, whatever you want, if it's over 555. So if it's over $555, you can use that $222 credit. And I would just be so appreciative for you not only sharing this episode and this podcast with your loved ones if this was helpful to you, but for your rating and reviewing of it as well. So, in the grand scheme of things, like I said, when you were working with your INS, working with your guides and angels, you can never be on the wrong path. So, focusing in on your intuition, noticing and getting really embodied, coming out of your head and into your body, and allowing yourself time and spaciousness, not only to receive, but to be in nature, to disconnect from the stimuli of the outside world, and to really learn how to hone in and trust the things that you're receiving. Because the more that you trust what you're receiving, your intuition and your internal guidance, your divine guidance, the stronger it gets. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I was saying in the beginning, where it's like a muscle that needs to be strengthened. So the longer that we do this and the more that we do this and the more that we trust ourselves, the stronger that intuitive muscle gets, the stronger your abilities get, the stronger your connection gets to your guides and angels. And this is something that is not only going to be super beneficial to you moving forward with decisions that you have to make in your life, but you'll never wonder if you're making the wrong decision. You'll never have to wonder, oh, was that the right decision? If you're being divinely guided and divinely led and utilizing your INS on a daily basis, you will always be put in the right place at the right time, and you will get the opportunities that you need, the resources that you need, and everything usually falls into place. This isn't to say that it's all going to be cupcakes and rainbows the whole time, because this is a spiritual path and it is not easy by any means, but it can be pretty simple, right? There are dark days and there is a lot that goes on through our healing, and a lot of muck comes up, and a lot of times we're called to do ancestral healing and generational healing, and you don't even know why you're going through certain things that you're going through, but it's based on you helping others, right? You being of service in some way to your generational line or your ancestral line. And so that is another topic for another time. But I'm just trying to say that in this spiritual journey, on the spiritual path, it's not all cupcakes and rainbows. It is not all love and light. There is a lot of darkness that we have to move through. But once we integrate our shadow, once we understand the things that we've gone through and we start to heal that stuff, we really begin to come back into our most authentic version of ourselves, the most authentic, um, not only version of ourselves, but the most authentic alignment that we can get with our soul self and with our inner child. And so when we allow space for both of them to have a seat at the table, not only do they get a say in how we're moving every day, but the weight isn't all on you to make the decisions anymore. And so that should bring you some peace, right? That you're not in this alone. You've got your higher self, your soul, you've got your inner child, and you've got this whole spirit team, or you may even have a whole ancestral team behind you too. Many of the people in my collective do have hundreds of ancestors behind them helping them on this path. So if you would like to work with me in any capacity, please do not hesitate to reach out or look at my website. It is linked in the show notes, and I will see you guys on the next episode. I hope this was helpful, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for tuning into the Sacred Path podcast. It is always an honor and a pleasure to share the wisdom, knowledge, and insight that I have learned on my journey and that others have learned on theirs. So please tune in, share, like, and follow, give us a review, and if you would like to work with me in any capacity, please follow the link to my website and either choose a sacred offering on the website or send me a DM. Love you guys. Hope you have a wonderful day.